I'm going to tell you a story about a guy named John. So John's an engineer who spent the majority of his career at a plant, and he was involved in every project, every maintenance shutdown, and he was there for decades and accumulated, a vast amount of knowledge about this particular facility, and it basically got captured in his brain, and the organization didn't have a process to capture, retain, and retain that knowledge and share that knowledge with others. So when John retired and left and walked out the door, all that knowledge and experience went with him. So, a couple of years after he retired, the plant came to a crash stop, and the team couldn't debug it, couldn't figure out how to get it up and running again. And so, out of desperation, they called John back in out of retirement and said, "John, we really need your help. Can you give us a hand to figure out what's going on?" So John was there for 5 minutes. He took a piece of chalk and he put a chalk mark on a part, and he said he replaced that part and the plant comes back up. And sure enough, they did that and it happened. And everyone was relieved. The plant manager was thrilled. He said, "John, we really want to compensate you for your time. Thanks for coming in. Send us an invoice." And John said, "Sure, no problem." So he sent in an invoice for $50,000. And the plant manager called him up and said, "John, you're going to have to justify this a little bit for me because 50 grand seems a little bit steep. You're only here for 5 minutes." And John said, "No problem." John revised his invoice with 2 line items. 1 chalk mark, $1. Knowing where to put it, $49,999. So the plant manager smiled and realized he's paid for, this has paid for itself several times over already in uptime, so he happily pays the invoice. Of course, John is sitting there saying, 10 years ago we went through the same thing, had the same problem, and that was the problem. So, but the organization, again, didn't have a way to retain and use that knowledge again in the future. So that just sort of illustrates how the business value that lessons learned, organizational knowledge can have